Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. So before we start the session, there's an important announcement and would like to inform you that please complete your NMIMS application process before your scheduled NMAT by GMAC exam date to be part of NMIMS. So I would like to begin by introducing today's speaker, Dr. Meena Gadiara, Director MBA Part-Time in Social Entrepreneurship, and she is currently appointed as Director, Jasani Center for Social Entrepreneurship and Sustainability Management. She has been instrumental in anchoring the social sensitivity agenda of NMIMS through various academic, research, and field intervention activities. As an educator and researcher, her work aims at creating a new generation of business leaders and social entrepreneurs who are acknowledgeable about and are committed to create a sustainable society. She serves on the board of Excel Industries as an independent director and is also appointed as a special invitee on the board of Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We welcome you to the session, ma'am. We are glad to have you on board. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. Can you hear me? Fine. So today I'm just going to share my thoughts on business transformation and social innovations. Okay. Can somebody tell me what is an innovation?
Guys, please you
Yes,
can
anyone over there?
they
What
can
is
type
what is an innovation?
they can type their answer in the chat box. They are
Yeah. Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. Can you please type your answers in the chat box? What do you mean by innovation first? Okay, trying something new. That's what Tanya says. Okay. Any new idea or method? Excellent. What else? Creating something new. Can you tell me some examples of innovation in businesses? Some examples of innovations. Examples. This is the meaning you're giving me. Can you give me some example of innovations?
Ma'am, Deepak Daniel has written Swiggy
Okay,
in the private
Swiggy.
chat.
Okay, fine. What else? What else? Okay. Online marketing, which was not there. Okay. PayPal, Dream11, excellent. What is, okay, electric vehicles, very good. Recently increased popularity of Airbnbs, correct? Okay, Uber. What is business transformation? Yes, graphene batteries. What does the term business transformation mean? Some old process with an aid of techno, the online selling of transit from brick and mortar. Okay, improving existing processes, change in business operations for the betterment. Okay, any any other interpretation about business transformation? Okay, giving business a new direction for a purpose, fulfilling customers' needs according to them, change needed to deliver better customer services. Okay, change in business due to changing technology, adapting to new innovative changes for the betterment. Okay, fine. So that is, so I'm sure that you're familiar with these two terms. So let us look at how do business schools look at innovations and how do business schools look at transformations. So these two terms, if we try to understand, if I gather from whatever you have said, it is in terms of it's a new idea, creative thoughts, new imaginations in the form of device or a method. So let's take, for example, we take Apple iPhone. It is an innovation which happened, which had all possible functions in one particular phone, and that transformed the business. So innovations besides your products and services can also be, applicant the applications for better solutions that meet the new requirements, okay, of the existing market. Let's look at COVID-19 and how did, Amazon used COVID-19 to its advantage in order to satisfy the needs of the consumer by tying up with small entrepreneurs across the country. So the entire distribution strategy became extremely innovative. So it's not just a product or a service, but it can also be a strategy which a business can design very innovatively in order to transform the entire business that is there. So when we look at business transformation in terms of understanding how does business change throughout the process, because of the innovations that are taking place in the market, there are and so they can be business transformation related to changing location of business. Okay, so from the global business, you try and understand how can which countries or emerging markets can have better land available or better distribution strategies available, so you can reorganize your business structures in such a way that it can give you a maximum profitability, and also it can generate some sort of a credibility. So in terms of academics or in terms of business language, it is fundamentally trying to change the systems, the processes, the people, the technology, or the entire business unit to achieve measurable improvements. Okay, so you change, so you may have your head office in Atlanta, but you will have all your factory locations in the emerging markets in Asia. So you will control your businesses from a particular country in order to see how best you can try and improvise the efficiency in your business and try to bring about more and more profitability. So what triggers innovations and what triggers business transformation is something that is happening in the environment. So whether it is an external environment or whether it is an internal environment, there has to be a trigger point in transforming the way in which you do business. And so when we look at COVID-19, it was a big trigger for businesses to transform the way in which they functioned. So when we are looking at environment, when we look at the larger environment, we find that in the society we are organized in a particular way, which is called as the bottom of the pyramid. This term was coined by Dr. C.K. Prahlad, and he said that the entire world is not working on the same type of organization. It is having lot of inequities, and basically businesses are interested in income inequities, because if there is more inequity for business, it can actually create problems for business. So business has to try and see that within which income levels what type of products it can produce. So on the screen, if you look at the pyramid which has been taken from the McKinsey report, you will find that at the base of the pyramid we have more than 6 lakh villages in India, which would require, okay, products like education, products in the areas of health, that means low cost pharmacies, low cost hospitals, low cost housing, support for agri businesses, support for energy solutions. So these are all the businesses which will flourish at the base of the pyramid. At the middle level of the pyramid you have towns, and here you would require the same type of business, but over here the paying capacity of the people is likely to be little higher than compared to the people who stay in rural areas. And at the top of the pyramid you have those mega cities where you can actually have a big business in terms of people taking luxury products. Okay, they can afford those luxury products which is there. So this bottom of the pyramid which you see on which is a colorful pyramid, it is based on the population. But when you look at the other side, the black and white pyramid which is there, it is based on the market, which says that whether rural or urban, you have more than 60% of India's population is at the bottom of the pyramid, and they require the same products like you and I require, which means housing, health, education, energy. Those basic things what we require is are also required by them, and hence can companies provide them these products at the cost in which they can afford. And of course there is this middle of the pyramid. Over here they would require certain products which are above the basic needs. So they would require some sort of products which can improve their comfort level. And at the top of the pyramid you have those elite, super rich people, who require exclusive products. So if you take, for example, something like a wristwatch, there are people at the bottom of the pyramid who would require those low cost wristwatches. At the middle of the pyramid, they would be able to afford some sort of pricing which will give them little bit of comfort level, or they would require some sort of segmentation in terms of color, in terms of the type of dials that are required in a watch, or they would require some sort of status items in the wristwatch. But the super rich may settle for exclusive watches which can cost 5 lakhs rupees or 6 lakhs rupees, which the people at the middle of the pyramid may not be able to afford, and they may not be interested. Now, having said that, if this is the type of environment in which Indian businesses have to operate and still maintain their profit, you have to understand that the bottom of the pyramid is having certain problems, which means that they are continuously in and out of poverty levels. Okay, whenever there is a good crop, or whenever they are able to earn their livelihood, they come out of poverty, and whenever they do not have those access, they again get back into poverty. Access to health, which is again very important. So they have problems in accessing private health because they cannot afford that. They have problems in accessing public health systems because the quality of healthcare at the primary health centers or municipal clinics or in rural hospitals is extremely poor because of lack of manpower or lack of technology. These people at the bottom of the pyramid also have a whole lot of environmental issues, which would comprise of water, sanitation, the amount of forest cover which they seem to be denied of, because these days all your forests are protected forest, and people who once upon a time stayed in the forest to earn their livelihood are now thrown out of the forest. So they have to migrate to different places. The whole issue of climate change is impacting agriculture, is impacting floriculture. So the livelihoods of people who depend upon agriculture as agriculture laborers or marginal farmers or small farmers is also getting impacted. Because of these issues, most of the time they are forced to migrate, and there is this whole issue about employment problems because industries require skilled people, and the type of skills which these people have do not match with the industrial requirements. So that is again another problem which people at the bottom of the pyramid face. A whole lot of human rights violation takes place at the bottom of the pyramid because when people do not have bargaining power, there will be exploitation of these people. Most of them work as casual workers or as contract workers who are exploited. A is because they do not have many options, B is because they do not have education, and C is because they do not have sufficient amount of skills. And all this puts them into a very precarious position, and that is how companies in when the countries got liberalized in 1990, and when they had to do businesses with emerging markets, these problems surfaced which became barriers in the trade. And that is how the whole concept of that if we have to have flourishing trade, businesses should be able to address these problems not through the philanthropic model, but they have to address it by using business for change. So business has to earn their profits because that is why they are into operations, and businesses will have to see that whatever these social problems are they giving them an opportunity to make profits. So instead of looking at these facts which I have presented as problems, businesses were asked to look at these facts as opportunities for doing good business. So some of the companies who have flourished in doing good businesses would be, let me give you an example from the Pyramids, which they have developed water ATM, and today Sarvajal, which is a brand name of of the product which they have brought, which is doing flourishing business in India. Sarvajal provides water to the poor at the cost which they can afford. So it is 1 rupee a liter. So you put a coin and you get 1 rupee of 1 liter of potable drinking water. So they did the survey to find out that if the poor has to spend a small amount of money in order to take care of the health, it does work. Rupesh is saying it is 5 rupees for 15 liters. Yes, Rupesh, I agree. Again, Sarvajal has different pricing strategy in different places. The more poorer places are there, Sarvajal prices are 1 rupee a liter. Okay, and the little bit affluent areas or areas which can work little better, they have a different pricing structure. You have Vatsalya Healthcare, which is a low cost healthcare services for women who are pregnant and for a good hospital delivery. This is a chain of hospitals in southern India which works on for profit principles but providing affordable medical care for the women in the rural areas who are lactating mothers, pregnant mothers, or mothers who have small kids. So they provide reproductive health care and maternal health care. You have ITC's eChaupal, which provides informations to the farmers and also handholds the farmers to develop sustainable agriculture, which is again another very good model which shows that you do not use philanthropy, but you use business as an agent for social change. You have Rural Shores, okay, which is training thousands of tribal youth and youth from the rural areas to manage BPOs. So instead of they migrating to urban areas, the educated people migrating to rural areas, they are coming in. They are coming into training people to handle these BPOs at a low cost. So Manav is asking a question: how do they book profits in such low cost? The issue is over. It is economies of scale. Okay, so when you have economies of scale, you're not just working on this model only in one country, but you are practically applying this model in different emerging markets wherever you have the business. And that is how they are able to make more profits. So there is the market at the bottom of the pyramid is 4 billion people. So you can understand how large is the market over there. You have Selco, which is into solar energy, which is very well known in Karnataka, and now they are shifting even to places in northern India. This is again a low cost solar energy provider, which is doing very good business. Similarly, you have low cost, portable toilets, which has been started by Rajiv Kher in Pune, doing excellent business, having a turnover of more than 700 crores now. Spring Health is another organization which is providing safe drinking portable drinking water. They started with 30 paisa a liter. Now, of course, they have increased their pricing. They started in Orissa and now they are expanding to other states. So there are many examples to showcase that business with a social purpose can also help in developing these profits. So when you do businesses with a social purpose, first and foremost, you do that innovation. The entire innovation of Sarvajal is in terms of that how you make poor people pay that 1 rupee or 5 rupee, okay, and how do you provide them with the portable drinking water at their doorsteps or in the community where they are staying. So you will find Sarvajal at railway stations, you will find Sarvajal in slum communities, you will find Sarvajal in museums, you will find Sarvajal at the ST bus stands. At different places you will find Sarvajal today operating. So wherever people are, you try and provide them with those services. So how does Sarvajal work? So anybody who wants to become a dealer in Sarvajal has to pay a small amount of fee, and then there is a training which is being provided, and then the Sarvajal installation responsibility has to be taken, and that is how it works. Let me see, there's something in chat. Okay, they also get subsidies and various benefits by the government that help them do these types of business. They do not profit much, no, they do not get subsidies. Okay, they do not get subsidies, and definitely we are out of the subsidy raj. These are all private businesses. E-Chaupal is by ITC. ITC will provide subsidy to Government of India, not the other way around. Similarly, Sarvajal started with the not-for-profit, with the NGO. So they experimented with this, and then they went in for the for-profit model, which is there. Similarly, the Vatsalya Healthcare Hospital is a for-profit. You do not get subsidies for a for-profit model. Please keep that in mind. So come out of this entire myth that there is a subsidy which is provided, and companies do not bother about it. No, companies are artificial entities created by law to make profits. So if it is not a profitable solution for them, they will not enter into such type of businesses. The whole microfinance industry is for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So which was earlier in microfinance, you had only two players. One was NABARD and the other one was State Bank of India. Today, you find almost all private banks getting into microfinance. Why? Because it is a big business opportunity for them. So it is not that the poor people are only want charity. That's a myth. Okay. Poor people are able to buy those products provided it is within their affordable cost. So you have to keep this in mind, because that is how the world is changing. Your shareholder is not giving you money, okay, to make losses. Your shareholder is giving you money to make profits. So if there is no profitable solution for a social problem, businesses will never start such things on big scale. You have to understand that couple of things which are changing today to sustain business and society. First and foremost is the whole digital revolution that is taking place. So there is a fourth generation of industrial revolution, as we say, is being brought up by the digital revolution, artificial intelligence. So when artificial intelligence is coming up in a big way, it's going to take away many jobs. And when it is going to take away many jobs, are we training people or human resources in such a way that they are able to acquire those technological and digital skills? So these are something which the industry is thinking, that how do we sustain if we do not invest in human resources? How do we sustain if we do not develop the human capital of the planet? How that means we require to invest in education, we require to invest in health, we require to invest in creating a very conducive labor markets, we require to invest in women, because that's a prerequisite. If you have a whole range of products for women, how are women going to buy if you do not develop their skill sets to be economically independent? You require to sustain the planet by investing in biodiversity, in forests, in protecting the oceans, looking at considering that industry requires energy, you require to create those energy resources. So whatever the industry requires as a prerequisite to sustain itself in order to make profits, it will have to invest. So the social transformation or the business transformation is coming because there are a lot of environmental problems in the larger society. With so many problems in the larger society, say if the larger society is not going to provide you with trained human manpower, how are you going to manage your businesses? If the larger society does not have sufficient water resources, how are you going to run your companies? How are you going to run your services? How are you going to run your factories? If the larger society does not create a safe city infrastructure, does not create a society which protects the assets of the companies and also of the government, it can create a huge problem for the company. If the larger society does not create those norms among people, okay, to behave in an ethical manner, how is business going to sustain? So we're looking at that to create a sustainable business, first you have to create a sustainable society. And to create this sustainable society, you're continuously required to innovate the way in which people's needs are getting satisfied. So if you would require, okay, require a branded car to go to office, the poor definitely requires a proper eco-friendly transport system to report for work or report for his education. So at different places, companies are looking at all these areas which they would require in future in order to create that long-term sustainability which is there. So profits will be there only if you take care of your people and if you take care of planet. If you do not take care of people and do not take care of planet, then your profits are not going to be sustained. So in order to give subsidy to an NGO or even subsidy to any company, okay, if I were to say so, in the first case, companies do not get subsidy. But if we take, for example, if companies were given subsidies, who can give subsidies? We all will have to pay taxes. When can we pay taxes? Only when our respective offices are able to pay us the salary. When will we be able to get salaries? Only if there is sustained profitability. So it is something that you need to understand, that business transformation and innovation are two things which will help you to be in profits. Business transformation will occur due to various factors. One of the major factor is environment. When I say environment, it is your external environment which is triggering the businesses to innovate the way in which they were doing business and transform their systems and structures in such a way that they are able to respond to that environment and create profits. So let's look at how does business get into creating sustainability by creating a win-win situation for the larger society and also for itself. So divide your company into four parts. There is workplace, there is marketplace, there is environment, and there is community development. So if I divide any business, okay, I have my workplace, I have my marketplace. What does workplace mean? Workplace means today it is not just men and women, it is men, women, physically handicapped, gays, lesbian, transgender. Am I becoming inclusive? If I do not become inclusive, I will have a problem by political parties and activist groups coming against me and and creating problems for me, for for my survival, by saying that I'm anti-gay or anti-lesbian or anti-transgender. So I do not want that tag. I want to be known as a fair employer. So workplaces are becoming more and more inclusive by accommodating people having different sexual orientations. Flexi time approaches are increasingly becoming common with larger businesses because with families becoming nano size, okay, and the young couple having multiple responsibilities to manage their household, there is in large leadership companies, you have a flexi time approach. Also with the gig economy, okay, young people do not want to work only for one employer. They want to work at their pace. They want to have a freelance style of working. So definitely wherever they are, they would like to work, okay, at in any part of the world. And so flexi time is getting introduced more and more to retain talent. Work from home is slowly getting accepted now by the companies. So we have still have an ambivalent attitude towards work from home. But COVID-19 has forced us to consider this alternative, at least for certain professionals or certain people at a certain age. So if you look at Amazon India's inclusion program, they create opportunities for women, transgenders, people with disabilities, that is PWDs, and military veterans. So I've just given you one example over here, but there are a couple of examples where people are trying to bring business transformation at the workplace by becoming more and more inclusive. You have marketplace, okay, where you have your suppliers, you have your consumers, you have your retailers, you have your vendors. So there is a lot of encouragement given to the suppliers. They are getting handholded to deliver products and services having minimal negative impact on the environment. It is no point a large company talking about carbon footprint and talking about saving on your carbon footprints and becoming more eco-friendly. Till your supply chain does not become eco-friendly, a large company cannot become eco-friendly. And hence, companies are trying to handhold their suppliers in order to see that how the suppliers themselves can also become eco-friendly and provide safe practices at workplace for their own employees, and can adopt safe logistic practices. And so the entire product cycle from production to delivery becomes eco-friendly, and this whole issue about green supply chain does not become a green wash exercise in public. Large companies have started investing more in supply chain development to take care of environment. The whole issue about environment at workplace, because there are people, they use water, there are people who use energy. So if an IT company says that we do not pollute environment, I do not agree to it, because even an IT company, there are people who work, they use water, they use power, that is energy, they create waste, okay, they are a threat to the society if you are not going to take care of it. And that is where you will find companies like PNG have this whole program called Waste to Worth, which has helped them to save $2 billion in value, okay, because of taking care of their waste management practices within the organization and trying to minimize the waste that they generate and recycle the waste and reuse their own products which are there. You have community development where you're trying to uplift the vulnerable through various programs. I've just given you one example over here, that is the Hindustan Unilever's Project Shakti, which was started in Nalagonda district in Karnataka, where they engaged women from self-help group to develop a dignified source of earning by training them to market HUL products in remote areas. So whatever you are doing at marketplace, you're doing in community development, you're doing at workplace, you're doing at environment, you're doing it with the motto of saving the planet and saving people. If you do not do these best practices in your organization, there will be a backlash from activists. There will be a whole lot of litigation cases against you. You will earn a wrong reputation, or a reputation which can put you into problems, and you will have to keep fighting court cases. You do not want that, because that will impact your profitability. So you're trying to put your best foot forward by creating lesser problems for the planet and lesser problems for people who are staying in the larger society. So if I give you an example of a cement sector company, let's take Gujarat Ambuja Cement Company. You have key material issues for the cement sector, like would be health and safety of people who work in the factory, climate change issues, okay, you will have your greenhouse gas emissions issues, you will have issues of R&D and product innovations, okay, which can create problems if you do not handle safely. You have issue of water management, biodiversity, circular economy, where you are recycling your waste, you're reusing your waste, you're creating minimum harm for the larger society. Your issue about supply chain management, community management, employee well-being, diversity, these are all issues, okay, which the company's leaders, that is people who are sitting on the board, they have to look into it, and they have to see that can we create minimum harm on the larger society, can we preserve the environment and social arena of our own company in such a way that we do not earn a negative reputation, and we do not have a negative impact on our shareholder value. At the end of the day, business transformation means creating shareholder value and creating societal value. If these two values are not created by businesses, then one will have to reconsider and see that how can businesses create those. So if you look at COVID-19 and business transformation, it has helped us in a big way to become more digitalized. Though we had Digital India policy which came up in 2015, but still we were not accepting the digitalization in a full form. But COVID-19, an external element, has pushed companies, has pushed NGOs, has pushed academic institutions to practice digital transformation. And so what has companies done? How have companies transformed their businesses or their some aspect of the businesses due to COVID-19? So if you have heard about a company called DCM Shriram Limited, they started control rooms in 50 villages that surrounded the company's manufacturing plants. Now, do not consider this as just an act of charity. They started this near the manufacturing plants because if more people, migrant workers who moved to their villages which had DCM, Shriram's factories, they were potential carriers of COVID 19. And if their health wouldn't be monitored, it would be a big threat to the employees of the DCM Shriram factories. And so, in due diligence, they took a proactive step and said that, okay, let's collaborate with the local government, start these control rooms, monitor the health of the migrant workers, provide them temporary shelters, provide them with sanitation kits. So, what did I do? I invested in protecting my own employees' health and the health of their families. You have a company called as Kobo 360, which is a logistic platform. What did they do? They basically used mobile channels to text health and safety tips to their drivers, including those who are micro entrepreneurs, because they match cargo with the drivers. So there were fleet of these trucks, and so to protect businesses and to keep your people educated, they started doing this. You have Olim International, which is a global agriculture supply chain integrator. They started using their online platform to send information and advice on COVID-19 to their smallholder farmers in its supply chain. So a lot of education, which is extremely important, providing with right type of information, because information is power. And so if you provide information to the people in the language which they can understand, you create a system in the organization, you create a vertical to provide these information, to develop resilience amongst your suppliers. Definitely it adds value to your business. You have another Indian company called as Shadowfax, okay, which is an Indian business to business which provides last mile delivery platform. It is connecting companies in the food and consumer good industries with micro entrepreneur drivers to deliver it to remote and underserved areas. What did this company do? They started providing drivers with health insurance worth rupees 1 million. For any driver who tested positive for COVID-19, the company provided 500 rupees a day for and 10 days of isolation. So instead of throwing them out of the job, you start creating that care economy, which is important. So business transformation, in order to create sustainable and long-term value, has these parameters in terms of providing good governance and leadership. So the board of directors in the first case have to be socially sensitive. If they are socially sensitive, they will be able to understand the requirements of your stakeholders. If you understand requirements of your stakeholders, you will be in a position to innovate. And when you innovate either a product or a service or the way in which you do business, that's called as a strategy. And this strategy, when executed in the right way with socially responsible practices, you will definitely earn profits. It's proved that socially responsible companies having a good sensitive business model have earned profits. So So there have been studies which are available in CSR and finance to showcase that if you have a right business model and if you're socially sensitive and you use your logic and passion and commitment in the right way, you will be able to make sustainable profit. Obviously, you cannot make profit till you do not have environmental leadership. Okay, that's stewardship for any company, whether it is a service company or whether it is a manufacturing company or whether it is a company which is which is registered as a not-for-profit company under Section 8 of the Companies Act. You require to provide that environmental stewardship, because at the end of the day, businesses are managed by people. So investing in people is extremely important to bring that transformation. Investing in the environmental resources which people require, like good water, potable drinking water, safe roads, okay, safe infrastructure, good quality air, lesser environmental damages, because these are the things which businesses, if they invest in, it will go a long way to sustain themselves. Okay, fine. Any questions you have? I'll be happy to answer if you can put it in the chat.
Ma'am, there is one question.
Yeah.
What's microfinance? What is microfinance?
Okay. Microfinance is a term which is utilized for giving a small amount of finances to your roadside vendors, like vegetable vendors, shoe shine boys, then women who do small businesses. Okay, so they are basically people who come from the bottom of the pyramid who require these small finance, which is there. And it is like your rickshaw drivers, okay, your taxi drivers. So it is basically given to people for the bottom of the pyramid where the interest rate is higher, but it is not as high as what a money lender charges you. So the interest rate will vary from maybe 16% to 20%, depending upon which is the microfinance company that is offering you with these loans. It is a sunrise sector. Microfinance is a sunrise sector, and it is a thriving business. Okay, Mohit Kalro is asking, is any social enterprise doing anything at the moment to address the coming artificial intelligence wave that will leave a lot of low income group jobless? Yes, there are a couple of social enterprises, Mohit. Let us take in terms of like for skill development and all, there is a technology interface which is being utilized by Tech Mahindra, which has come up in a big way. There is Team Lease, okay, which is there, which is also addressing the issue of artificial intelligence. And so for the low income groups, what is important is that basic education is important. So your basic education is extremely important, where children know how to read, write. Children are able to get some amount of formal schooling so that they will be trained to handle this artificial intelligence issue. What is the future of India-based businesses? Now, which type of businesses are you asking, Harsh? Which type of businesses? There is a question which you have asked, what is the future of India-based businesses? So the answer is both bright and not so bright. I'll tell you bright because, okay, four pillars of the economy. Okay, can you define what are the four pillars of the economy for the benefit of the class? I mean, for the benefit of the audience here. So then I can address each one of them. Okay, any other question till Harsh gives us those four pillars? Okay, does the operating cost of companies get affected as they don't get subsidized? The whole business plan is made in such a way, okay, that they will try to see that the break even point, okay, they will get it after 3 years or 4 years, depending upon, because these businesses also require investments, and an investor is not going to give you only because he's bothered about the poor. So when you present your business plan to the investor, and most of these B plans for the bottom of the pyramid get funded by social investors. Now, social investors are investors who will give you money for doing ethical business. Okay, so they want their return, their return on investment, but they will not be like commercial investors who will squeeze you. They are ready to wait for a few more years, okay, and they also handhold you. They provide you with their network support. So you are able to get the network for marketing your products, you're able to get the investment from social investors. So something like, let's take portable toilets. Rajiv Kher's example that I may give you, the company's name is 3S. Okay, it's a Pune based company. So they got their investments from Acumen funds, and Acumen fund is a social investor. And Acumen invested earlier, Avishkar had invested in them. Okay, so there were these social investor companies which invested in portable toilets. And when you have portable toilets, it is addressing the whole issue about open defecation. So you have the government support also. Okay, policy support is there. Government becomes your biggest buyer of the services. So the operating cost of these companies, okay, is designed in such a way that the break even point may not be within the first 2 or 3 years, but it will be over a period of 4 to 5 years. Depends upon company to company.
Ma'am, there's a question from Manish Singh.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have knowledge of AI, what they should do for survival industry?
People who do not have knowledge in AI, okay, and how will they survive in industry? First of all, the industry will not take you. Okay, so you'll have to survive on your meager incomes, doing jobs which are maybe jobs which will be of physical labor. So let's take construction industry. So you have the National Skill Development Corporation's sector skills construction industry sector which is there, which provides you with these short-term trainings in construction. So they provide you with those types of things if you do not have education, if you do not have that type of a thing. So these are 2 weeks training programs. So let us take, for example, if I give you an example of Lafarge Industries, which is a cement industry, with the government of Chhattisgarh, they have started a mason training program. So the masons are trained, okay, in order to what are the latest technologies in masonry. So they give you that 2 weeks training. Similarly, Asian Paints has started training program. They have an Asian Paints training academy. So they have short-term courses for the traditional painters. So companies are also, if you look at the skill sets required, they can be from lower level of skill set to the highest level of skill sets which are there. And that is how companies are taking care of people not having access to artificial intelligence. So Harsh has replied saying that education, infra, health, and energy. Now all these sectors which you have identified, Harsh, are will get a lot of support from investors, because you're not just looking at India, you're looking at emerging economies. You would require education, okay, for your larger population, and education includes your skill development also, according to the new education policy which is there. So education is a big industry now. It is not just run by charitable organizations, but there are private players who have got into education. So whole technology based education which is there is coming up in a big way. So there's a report by one of the big four companies, consulting companies, on how education is a big industry and how much investment is coming from abroad in this industry and what type of profitability is there. Infrastructure, yes, both soft infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure, which means construction of roads, railways, airways, ports, shipping, and all those things are also going to benefit a lot from investors from abroad, and they would like to invest in us in so that they get a better business deal, and we also will be able to improve our own businesses in house. Health, of course, is required, and a lot of social enterprises, for profit social enterprises, have come up in the health sector. So a couple of them have come up in the health sector, especially in diagnostic or bioengineering. Engineers have come up with enterprises which is providing equipments like scan doing CT scan at the lowest cost, or lab technologies which are there. So instead of spending 1200 to 1500 rupees on doing your lab test, these are now available at 300 rupees. So that's how the startups are coming up. Energy, of course, because a lot of alternative energy resources are available now. A big amount of investment is coming in the energy sector also. These are sectors which are favorite sectors for social investors. So if you go to, after this particular interaction, just for a change, if you go to Acumen Investments, you will find all these areas are mentioned over there. So, ma'am, do you mean that if I had to do a job, I should prefer going to companies which focuses on profits as well as do social work like Tata Company? It is, if you were to now large companies, okay, mixing both the things. That means they are becoming more and more socially responsible. When I say they are becoming more and more socially responsible, in other words, there's a whole lot of risk which is there outside if you do not become socially responsible. If you violate environment, let's take, you throw garbage out and you create, you just create some reports which show that you're a good company. Those days are gone. You have information communication technology now, so your competitor company is going to expose you. So you wouldn't like to be exposed in that manner, and you wouldn't like to get into those problems. So as a proactive stand, you will become more and more socially responsible, because that is your risk mitigation strategy. So you would also like to work in a company which does not put you into risky scenarios. Okay, you would like to work in a company which is taking care of human beings, whether they are customers, whether they are employees, whether they are vendors, whether they are dealers. It treats people as human beings. So as a risk mitigation strategy, you find socially responsible practices are getting adopted more and more. So it is not just the Tatas. You have companies like Mahindras, you have companies like Raymonds, you have Kirloskars. I can just rattle off names where people are becoming more and more socially responsible because of activism. Society is becoming intelligent. Young people like you are getting into investigative journalism, are putting things on social media, are doing so many things. So during the 80s and 70s and early 90s, we did not have these facilities, and that is why companies could get away doing wrong things. But now in the current scenarios, it is difficult for companies to do wrong things and retain their profits. Okay, what are your views on the current Adani project, renewable energy, since solar panel takes a lot of area to generate megawatts of energy? Now, the whole subject about renewable energy is very ambivalent. Okay, first and foremost is renewable energy requires a lot of investment. Again, the incubation period for renewable energy is very long. So this would, in terms of like when if solar panels are taking a lot of area to generate megawatts, but we can look at other sources of energy, like energy from husk, or energy from water waves, or energy from wind. We are not considering those alternate forms of energy at all. We are looking at solar, and solar has been in India since 1970s. We are struggling with solar, and we still haven't been able to find a suitable answer. So I have not studied the Adani project to a greater detail, so I will not be able to comment on it. Okay, can you share your thoughts on how FMCG sector might shape up in the coming 10 years according to consumer behavior? Also, is there going to be a real significance of the upcoming D2C businesses in the long run? Okay, can you tell the audience what is D2C business? Can you just type it so that people are aware of what you're saying? Till that time, I will answer your first part. Now, the FMCG sector in the next 10 years, how it is going to come in terms of, let us take with homegrown companies like Patanjali coming up. Okay, the whole FMCG sector will have to undergo a lot of changes in terms of there is more and more cry which is happening for organic products which are required, in especially in the consumable segment. There is a whole lot of awareness that is coming up. The health industry is educating people about what they should be eating and how they should be eating. So FMCG companies especially those in the area of food, okay, should be making a note of these things which are important. Other areas which are there, like with the type of income levels which are fluctuating, it is not something which the secondary reports say that we have a surplus and other type of things. So there will be certain states which would require lower levels of FMCG products because they have already exhausted their requirements. Okay, so you will have more and more states which have not developed so much. They may have a demand for your FMCG products, but they may not have the price to pay. So you would require to tweak your business model in such a way that if you have to create that demand in those areas, then what is the type of livelihood supports that the company can provide through its CSR activities. So if the CSR activities are providing livelihood support, you create some amount of surplus with the people so that they are able to buy your products. But if you can have tie-ups of the FMCG company with microfinance company, you have tie-ups of FMCG company with banks and other type of things, definitely I see those types of marriages happening in the near future. Now direct to consumer, it's going to grow especially in urban areas. So there will be startups, okay, who will be able to provide you with more personalized services. So COVID-19 has actually proved that how direct to consumer services in the areas of vegetables, fruits, okay, food products, that has really worked out well. So it all depends upon if there can be aggregator models coming up over here. And if an aggregator model comes up, okay, in a big way, it can be a very big threatening type of scenarios for larger companies. So the larger companies will have to work with these aggregator models, and they should have a collaboration in order to see that they are all able to survive in the market. It is actually, the market is a red ocean market full of competition. It's not a blue ocean market at all. Current change in RBI policy for banking license to NBFCs, will it affect in negative way by giving more powers in the corporate houses and encouraging income inequality, and also trust of people on banking system by FDIs coming in, like in case of recent cases? Yes, I agree with you that the current RBI policy for giving banking licenses to NBFC is going to create some sort of an inequity in the larger society, which we'll have to wait and watch how does it react. Okay, how? Because at the end of the day, people who are managing businesses or managing banks or managing these NBFCs, if they control their greed, okay, things will be fine. If they do not control their greed, then it is going to create a lot of mistrust and lot of problems for the larger society. Okay, polarizing the money like Geo Reliance, Geo Mart, one man takes all. Is that viable? Given a choice to Reliance, they will they can outsource India to any other country also. So that's a major problem. So you have the whole power of money uh, is actually is actually playing a huge game, because there is a marriage between politics and capitalist. So the political policies, if they are taken care of by the capitalist will benefit, and we do find Reliance taking full advantage of this. And yes, there is a possibility of polarizing the money, not just by Reliance, but even if I may be very upfront, even by Adani. Okay, according to you, ma'am, what do you think will Indian market will have a rise in economy due to Atmanirbhar thing? Now, this Atmanirbhar slogan, it's actually in terms of the word itself is very good, but the ecosystem to create Atmanirbhar is very difficult. We do not have ecosystems to make those startups Atmanirbhar. Are the bigger companies, to what extent are they supporting startups? To what extent are they mentoring startups? So if you take Atmanirbhar for SMEs and all, they are facing the largest problems in COVID-19. they still have not been exempted from GST. They still have not been getting that type of support which they require from the government. So Atmanirbhar is becoming a slogan than actually transforming the way in which businesses have to be supported. So there are big claims at the policy making level of about Atmanirbhar Bharat, but they are not. It's not actually seeing in the actual field. Okay. Thanks for drawing attention to the plight of SME. They are suffering a lot. Yes. Okay. How easy would it be for someone else to copy business and undercut particular businessman? Very easy. Very easy. We human beings are gifted with these talents, okay, of copycats, businesses. It will be very easy. So ultimately, there are things which I would like to close the session with. There is something called as Niti and Niyat. अगर आपकी नियत बेकार हो तो नीति अच्छी हो ही नहीं सकती है. ओके, नीति इज प्लान and niyat is your value system. So for good businesses to transform or to innovate, you require both niti and niyat. Okay, so the niyat is the primary thing which any business requires, big or small. If the niyat is good, then the plan will be good, provided you know how to play the game well. Okay. So for the current investment done by foreign investors in permanent or for short period of time, just to earn short-term profit, or is it to boost the Indian market? Now, when an investor makes money, I mean, invests money, he's never going to invest without thinking profits. Okay, please keep that in mind. A social investor will invest. Now, who are social investors? So you have companies which give, let us say, Norwegian funds. Now Norwegian funds is a social investing agency, so they will provide funds for the energy sector, they will provide funds for the health sector, provided you have not violated human rights, provided you have not created sexual harassment at workplace, provided you have not sabotaged people and there is nothing in the public eye for them to not consider your request for giving them the investment. Now, when it is a foreign investment happening in the country, they will always give it for profitability. Now, they would be interested both in short term and in long term profits. So, it is, let's take infrastructure projects. Infrastructure projects will not give you short term profits, they will give you long term profits. So, it depends upon which businesses they are investing their money and how long they are ready to wait for the business, for the business to give you those return backs. And so that will shift from the type of business, the maturity level of business, the how soon the business can return the money on couple of factors. Suzuki and few other automobile companies have denied from importing parts from China since the price there is much less. Okay, anything else?
I think you've covered all the questions now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we can end this session. Thank you
Yeah.
so much once again
Yeah.
for such an insightful session
Yeah.
and sharing your experience and knowledge with us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, all the audience. Please don't forget to apply for NMIMS before your NMET scheduled exam to be part of NMIMS.